welcome to technically episode 6 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host for the evening, Tyler Schatz, someone who is not down with the Lord of Light's goals there. Joining me here again are the Howards this evening for this fine recording of a podcast. Amanda, say hi.
Hello.
Steven.
Marhaba.
Sure. Unfortunately, Mr. Gary Delaney is out on assignment this week recording, so we'll have to get him next
He's hunting
time.
dragons.
He's out hunting dragons. There we go. But joining us for the first time in since, well, I technically just took only one episode off as far as the listeners concerned, but Mr. Nick Castillo.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back to the podcast, Nick. It's kind of a refresher for the audience out there. We kind of did this last episode. You want to kind of go through your history of the world of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire?
Yes, I have not read any of the books, which is a huge detriment to me. I would love to. I did, however, peruse through the history of the World of Ice and Fire book, which has great source material about the history of Westeros and Essos and Sothros building up to the events of A Song of Ice and Fire and the Game of Thrones TV show. So it's a lot of really rich history about the kingdoms, how they were formed, all the way from the Andals and the First Men and the Giants and the Children of the Forest, building up to what's going on now. So a lot of really sort of those detailed interactions, family, house lineages, and sort of why people seemingly hate each other from the get-go. So very, very good and helpful to understand there. As far as me personally, I've seen all of the TV show, so no spoilers. But I actually like the way it ended. I'm not in love with it, but I am the odd card out there where most people despise the ending to Game of Thrones, and some even say that that's ruined all of it for them. But yeah, we were just talking earlier about the rich stories that are woven throughout the series. And so even though it may not be the ending I would have done, I am pleased with the way it ended because it ended. And a conclusion is still the ending of a good story.
No one got to see this, but I glared at Nick. Glared.
I take it. I like the back and forth.
We'll definitely have quite a discussion go on once we get towards the end of the show, for sure. We're not there yet. We are now into season 2, and we have just recently watched episode 1, The North Remembers, and episode 2, The Nightlands. So to kind of start off talking a little bit about episode 1, The North Remembers. So just the synopsis of the episode that I'm pulling off of IMDb. The North Remembers. Tyrion arrives at King's Landing to take his father's place as Hand of the King. Stannis Baratheon plans to take the Iron Throne for his own. Robb tries to decide on his next move in the war, and the Night's Watch arrives at the House of Craster. So kind of just starting off here a little bit, definitely you could tell, like, for sure, they got more money to film the episodes for the show because the production quality of everything has gone up tremendously here. You can instantly tell. And then just some other stuff. You get introduced to, Stannis, Melisandre, Sir Davos, the Lord of Light, the Great Prophecy, Dragonstone, the place where Stannis is currently located. Nick, I'm going to kind of throw this over to you. Is the prophecy called out in the book, The History of Westeros, or The History of A Song of Ice and Fire? I can't forget what the name of the book's called.
Yes, a history of history of the world of Ice and Fire, I believe. Yes, it does make reference to it. It's not a very prominent story throughout most of the world. Really, Old Volantis and Essos, which is at this point touched on in the series, but not really delved into. But yeah, the Red Lady, the Melisandre character, and Amanda probably knows better, having read most of the books. But her whole group and where she is coming from is discussed a little bit, but really not too much at this point is known in the larger world as a whole about the prophecy.
Amanda, do you remember, like, I'm kind of past a little bit at this point in the books. Do you kind of remember the prophecy very well?
I do not. I was thinking I should restart the books. I've read all the books, and then I read Fire and Blood, which, by the way, is also excellent. I would highly recommend. I have not read the history. I'm feeling like I should because I actually need a new book, and this would be perfect timing.
Nick's holding up the book.
I had to dig it out.
I love all the little details that you get from that stuff. Even the show, actually, I feel like does a good job of that. There's little details even to down like in the clothing and little things. I remember when I rewatched this episode, I was staring at the table at Dragonstone, and I love how they put all that detail on on that table.
Yeah, so
No doubt.
a little history of Dragonstone. I believe Dragonstone is where Aegon the Conqueror first landed with his dragons when they began their assault of taking over the 7 kingdoms of Westeros there. And
Correct.
it was it basically became the house seat of the Targaryens, right? Even though they basically ruled from King's Landing, Dragonstone was the house seat of the Targaryens.
Ancestral seat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aegon had a table carved there at Dragonstone that was basically a replica of the world of Westeros, right?
Yep, a map of it.
Okay. Which Stannis now occupies Dragonstone currently, and he's using the table for his own planning, basically, because the story kind of thread going through this episode is Stannis kind of getting ready. Stannis is now trying to press his claim for the throne, which we learned from season 1 there. He believes he has a better claim to the throne, being he is Robert's brother, and Robert's supposed children are not really his children.
Right. He's the eldest.
Yep.
No, he's not the eldest. Sorry. He's yeah.
Robert's the eldest.
Robert was
Yes,
the eldest.
Yeah, Stannis
Yep.
was the second child there.
Eldest survivor.
Yes.
Middle brother.
Which I think that was actually, we're talking about those little details. One of the things that leads into with Stannis is him narrating this letter to one of his rivals. And I think is it Joffrey that he's narrating it to? Or it's someone, who was it that he was narrating it to?
He's
His younger brother, the youngest.
Is it his younger?
He's writing the letters to like all the lords of Westeros, but he's dictating the letter out loud to Sir Davos's son.
Yeah, but but as you go through it, you start to learn a lot about him in just that one little moment, because he goes on about, tell the ruler this, but don't use the word king because he's not a king. But make sure that he is labeled as a sir because he is a sir, and make sure that he does this because he's a this. And he's trying to go by all these weird rules that just make it sound so dumb, while at the same time, and maybe it's a good job of kind of personifying him, at the same time waging a war against the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms, and switching religions, which is a huge thing. Just abandoning the old religion, switching religions. So he is detailed, precise about how etiquette is supposed to be, and how strict he's supposed to be with all these different procedures. But at the same time, when it comes to the real things that really matter, the religion that governs the entire Westeros, the kingdom that covers the entire Westeros, throw those out the window because it doesn't serve him.
Yeah, he gets rid of basically the not the old gods, because that is the North, but the 7 basically, which we covered last episode there. So I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit before that is all throughout this episode there's shots of basically the sky, and they have the red comet there basically, which every character kind of touches on it, kind of thinking it symbolizes this according to their culture or their religious views and everything like that. So we had some people touch on that it's going to symbolize a great victory is coming, or a great defeat is on the horizon, or that magic has returned to the world, or the death of Ned Stark, or I think in the other one was like dragons have been reborn into the realm. What did you guys kind of think of how that helped kind of, I don't know, portray each character there a little bit more?
I loved it. It shows that everybody, and it's very realistic because everybody's going to interpret that based on what they know and their situation. And it also showed what was happening and what was important to each character and their situation at the time anyway. And it left you as
Kind of
the
holds a
viewer
mirror to them.
wondering, what?
Oh, sorry. No, I was.
Oh, no, sorry. It left at least me as the viewer wondering who was right or if anyone was right or if it mattered.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
sorry.
Stephen.
What I was just going to say is it kind of holds a mirror to each of the characters. It doesn't show anything about the world because I don't want to get too far ahead of us, but I mean, the comet is portrayed to be incredibly important in the end of season 1. This is the coming of a new age. This is going to be the defining moment of the book. It's going to change everything. And what it becomes is a mirror showing you what the characters really believe and what the characters think about the rest of the world, what their deeper beliefs are, not so much their outside convictions, but the belief that dragons are back, that magic's coming back into the world, everything that you just said.
Mm-hmm. You got anything on that kind of symbol there, Nick?
I agree. The same points. It helps us learn more about where each character's motives lie. You know, I feel like they would be much more prompted to take action if they felt a great victory was on the horizon, or if they felt that it was prophesying that magic was there, they'd tread more carefully when attacking or scheming against their enemies. Spot on.
All right. I'll bring up one more question here, then I'll throw it over to somebody else for a couple of their questions they might have had from this episode. So, as part of Tyrion basically heading to King's Landing there now to take over for his father as Hand of the King per his father's instructions there, he also brings Shay with him, even though he was specifically told by his father not to do that. And I'm kind of wondering here, like, what do you guys think it is about Shay that just Tyrion is just so smitten with? Like, why does he want? I mean, obviously to just kind of annoy his father a little bit. I'm sure that's why he does it. But like, is there something else that maybe I'm missing? Of like, why does Tyrion want to do this? Why does Tyrion want to bring Shay with him to the capital?
I have an insight, I thought. I'll go real quick.
No, go for it.
I just thought the companionship. I think that Bronn, who is his current companion, has a different type of relationship with him. You know, it's a fellow man, someone he can play around with, but mostly for protection. He does. I mean, obviously the gender is different, but he sees Bronn more as a means to an end to protect him at this point. I don't think that their relationship has quite grown to a deeper level yet. Whereas Shay, it's more of a witty game. Bronn is certainly the Bronn, and Shay is willing to combat him with her tongue. You know, she's much more quick to point out his flaws or highlight his flaws, which in a way he kind of sees as an equal. To this point in the show, he's the quickest tongue in the realm, but she's willing to hold him accountable. And there's even a point, I think, in this episode where she kind of confronts him outright about, why are you trying to hide me away? You know, if I come with you, can I walk about? Whereas he says, I need to protect you and hide you to an extent, where she sees more of that equality between who she perceives herself to be, and certainly I think who she aspires herself to be. She wants to be someone of power moving forward.
Great point there, Stephen.
I think Nick's point is actually excellent, and I think it's better than my point. My point was just, I feel like it's also a idea of kind of a romantic, a romantic element that it's an attachment to him that he doesn't get from anyone else. Obviously, Bronn, I do believe he gets a little bit more of the bromance with, but he doesn't get the real romance or the real kind of love aspect from anyone else. Any woman in his entire life hates him. And then here comes this one woman who is willing to accept him, willing to do anything for him. He sees it, I think, as paying her, and then she does all that for him. But I think also I don't remember if this has been talked about yet, but he has kind of a soft spot for when he pays for these women who really honestly try to like him or pretend to like him, and he is willing to let himself believe that. He's willing to suspend his disbelief because he wants that. He wants these women to actually like him because and I don't think it's his fault. I'm not saying, because he's generally kind of a nice-ish guy. He's a dick, but he's also a nice guy. But there's no one willing to actually accept him and like him in a romantic sense. And Shay is willing to do that and willing to just completely overlook all these physical faults that everyone else scorns him for.
Yeah, I honestly I agree with both of you. I think the companionship of it, I could be the romantic interest, but Stephen, you have a good point in that like everybody in his life looks down on him. And we can all say, oh, that must be lonely. Well, it's probably cripplingly lonely. And if he's got the chance to bring someone along with him that seems to care for him, seems to like him, he can't talk to anyone. His family hates him, except for Jamie, who is not accessible at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, great points there, everyone. Yeah, I would definitely probably, I guess, talking about that a little bit more, yeah, it makes a little bit more sense that he's probably like ultimately like a really alone kind of in his world there, because like you said, his family all pretty much hates him or despises him, and he finally now has somebody to kind of talk to that somewhat is able to not necessarily match intellect with him, but like match kind of wits with him.
I mean, I know if I meet someone that just slightly doesn't seem to like me, I'm like, did I do something to offend you? I don't know. He meets everybody who immediately looks at him with disgust and despises him for one thing or another, but mostly because he's a dwarf.
All right, I'm gonna turn it over to someone else for a couple of their questions if they've got some. Amanda, do you want to have anything to kind of make us ponder further?
I did. What was my question? I thought it was interesting also when it goes back to Rob's story. Rob's trying, like, him having to figure out what you do next. His plan was to save his father. What do you do now? Do you admit defeat and just go back? Do you cut yourself off? Do you carry on? I thought that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I can start here talking. Yeah, it's definitely he's called the Bannermen, so he's basically gathered everyone from the north that has pledged allegiance to his father's cause. And now he's kind of got to decide, what does he want to do? They've already crowned him at the end of last season there. They crowned him King of the North there. Did the whole King of the North thing there. So now he's got basically the entire North rallied behind him to go do something. And obviously the first cause that they wanted to do, rescue his father from the Lannisters in King's Landing, is gone. His father's now dead. Now I think he kind of changes his plans to his sisters are kind of still there. They're being held captive by the Lannisters, or at least I think his mom kind of helps push him that way as well, Catelyn Stark. And then it's kind of like, okay, well now he's got more problems though too, because he's got Renly Baratheon has now stepped up to kind of try and press his own claim to the Iron Throne. And then Theon plants the idea to him to go talk to Balon Greyjoy, because they have the ships there basically that could help maybe take on the Iron Fleet, which is it the Iron Fleet? Would you call it the Iron Fleet, I guess, for King's Landing's ship? Okay.
I think the Iron Fleet was Balon Greyjoy's. I think
That's why I think Balon's is Iron Fleet.
I believe so.
Oh,
Fine for now.
Then the Throne's fleet there, basically.
I'm trying to remember what their name is. I can't remember it either.
Yeah. And then two is kind of, he's also balancing now. They've captured Jaime Lannister there at the end of the last season there in their first major victory. And then also too, now his mom comes up to him with the thought of like, trust me to go talk to Renly Baratheon, because we can't really send you out there. Otherwise, you could get captured and be sold back to the Lannisters or something like that. So it's a lot of stuff that he's now balancing on his shoulders and trying to kind of all figure out, okay, what do I do here? Because he's shown that he's so far, the couple of battles that they've done, they've been pretty successful in. But does that ultimately mean he's got enough strategy to kind of take himself to the end of the war?
Well, and he's also aware, I like that of the people around him, like, yes, he's in charge, yes, he's their king, but at the same time, I mean, a group of people is essentially a mob. Like, he admits that, like, you can't just trade the Kingslayer for 2 girls. Like, and you've called the Bannerman all this way. They're going to want a result. If not, if you don't give them something for satisfaction, it's not going to work out.
Absolutely.
Never has an army been called up, dragged out, traveled hundreds of miles, be like, okay, I guess we failed, guys, let's go home. Especially when they're kind of winning, militarily at least.
Right.
So to kind of pile on to this question of what is his strategy at this point in time, I find it kind of strange that his strategy is so far south. Because when you think about it, Robb doesn't need to win. He needs to not lose. He's going for independence in the north. He does not need to invade the south. He needs the south not to invade the north. So I find it personally strange that he does rally his bannermen so far south, away from their supply chains, away from their farms, away from where they can work the fields. He doesn't. I think he's a great battlefield commander, and it shows that. Well, it doesn't show actually, which is kind of part of the neat part of the book and the show. It doesn't show how great a commander he is. You just have to kind of imagine it. But I don't, and maybe one of you guys has a better insight on this. Why would he rally them so far south? Why so far away from Winterfell, his main base of operations where he has supplies?
They had already gotten past the twins by the time
I was curious of that. Yeah.
died. So, I mean, obviously he was already past
He's in the
further
Riverlands.
south than the north, but that's a good point. I mean, he's really good at each battle. And he's still a kid, so how do you turn that into a long-term strategy for winning a war?
Right. As a tactician, I think there's several people who comment about it. Either I just spaced his name, Tyrion and Jaime's dad, Tywin Lannister, has mentioned. They mention he's young, he's green, he'll lose right away, and Tywin says he's won every battle that he's come across. And I mean, as someone who's young, and even if he's knowledgeable about how to wage a war, he's inexperienced. Yeah, if I'm winning, why would I think to turn back? I don't have the knowledge to think that I'm away from my base. So to your point, Stephen, I think absolutely it's odd from our obvious, third-party advantage to think, why would you move so far away from your main base of operations? Keep your army well supplied, easily protected from the thin of the neck in the land of Westeros, where you can keep everybody more or less north, and just keep the south from invading north. But it's I mean, he keeps pushing further and further south, and it's hard to move an army that far. It's hard to keep people motivated. To Amanda's point, they're looking for some sort of resolution. They're looking for that. We defeated everybody's well aware at this point that Joffrey's been called out as a bastard. He doesn't have an actual claim to the throne. Let's go depose the fake king. And that's kind of what they're marching to. Perhaps that's what's driving them that far south. Not just that, hey, we're winning and Robb seems to be a good king, but the ultimate goal maybe for them might be to get down to the Iron Throne.
Yeah, I think it would have taken a fair dose of convincing charisma and some serious, even threatening, to get everyone to just go back to the north and say, we're going to stay up here.
Sure.
He would have faced some kind of challenge at home at the very least.
Could be.
So I guess the second point on that, and talking about Robb's kind of strategy, is, and Tyler alluded to it, his release of Theon Greyjoy.
Theon
Yeah.
Greyjoy.
Yeah, no, Theon Greyjoy to go talk to Balon Greyjoy to get his support in the war, which struck me as and again, we're talking about a kid doing it, but a naive decision. Giving up your hostage, which has held Balon in check for so long, and sending that specific person to go negotiate for you, shows a lot of trust in Theon, which obviously ends up. I have mixed thoughts on Theon that I'll get to a lot later, but I think what did he have a better decision there? Could he have made a more rational decision, or was that the best decision he had?
I could step into that one. I think that it's a strong decision. It shows you a lot of naivety, a lot of trust in this, essentially, yeah, as a hostage, that this ward that has been kept by your father for so long, because he knows that the Iron Islands had rebelled against the rest of the mainland there. I think it's naive, but I don't know. I think it shows a strong will of trust too. Obviously, that trust was misplaced in that third person perspective. But I feel like, yeah, there were probably a couple other options there. I mean, you could send another courier with some of Thelon's thoughts and a message that says, "This is what we're looking to do. I will be released. You know, I could come back and visit at some point." Or what other options would be open to us? Or maybe, since you have the upper hand in holding the only male heir to the throne for the Iron Islands, that you reach out and have Balon send some sort of, emissary or something that says that he's willing to play ball, and leverage it that way, rather than sending your one chess piece over to be, just to let go. I think that there were other options there. It probably was not the best one. It just was the strongest move. It was a deciding move to swing the pendulum one way or the other, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, we only end up calling it stupid because it failed.
Right.
Theon, he did intend to do it. He went, it wasn't a trick when he offered and when he first went there, but it showed a serious lack of understanding of the Iron Islands from any of their point of view. And
absolutely.
Obviously, it developed Theon into a person later on, but
yeah, I would say too, if you think back to maybe even from Rob's perspective, Theon is somebody he grew up with there, basically. Granted, Theon wasn't really there to begin with by his choice, but he kind of grew up with the Starks there. Rob and him were probably fairly close friends, brother-like almost, to the point there where, Theon was there. I think one of the first people to kind of call Rob King in the North there during that everybody stand up and kind of cheer moment at the end of that episode there. So I think Rob had trust in Theon to kind of do that, but then I think it gets into kind of maybe even the later episodes here of the season there, of just kind of, again, how that decision was kind of maybe not the best, because Theon didn't really have Theon only probably read about the Iron Islands really to the point in books and teachings from the Maester at Winterfell, which is obviously probably from a different perspective than how the people on the Iron Islands view themselves.
Absolutely.
There. So culture and just the way of life is kind of different. So when Theon is then probably pressed there when he returns, he realizes this is not going to be like what I thought it was.
Yeah, the books I don't remember exactly the wording that they used, but I remember when his father asked him, "Did you pay the iron price of the gold for that trinket?" And he just stares at him numbly, realizing that he had forgotten how they did that. And just that hitting him, being like, "Oh God, oh no." Just the first realization that this is not going to go right the way you wanted it to.
I see a lot of parallels in people falling back into old, or in this case, bad affiliations, where we're judging Rob's choices on his tactics in war, but it's a lot of the Maesters or a lot of his bannermen saying, "I want this resolution," and he keeps pushing further and further south. Or, in this case with Theon saying, "Yeah, did you pay the iron price?" No. And his sister and his father really pushing on him to, where's the salt in your blood type, mentality. And he kind of results back to, this is who I really am and who I should be. And yeah, it's absolutely, the environment, that whole nature-nurture discussion.
Maybe not really who he is, but who he should be. I think that's maybe more the stronger part. That's who he views he should be, is Ironborn, not a Stark of Winterfell.
I'd say
I also think
others view he should be.
Yeah, and I think that's actually I've had plenty of people that just despised him at that point, but it's also a good indication of what we do in real life. We do form ourselves based on other people's expectations of us all the time.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to despise Theon for that, but I mean, plenty of us feel like we're supposed to be a certain way, so we do that, whether or not it's actually what we feel like we are or what we should do.
trying to tie it back to a previous discussion we just mentioned with Tyrion. He has that line in the first season. Never forget who you are. Others certainly will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you. And really leaning into others' perception of who he is has made him a stronger character. We perceive him as a stronger character, even though physically he's one of the weaker ones in the people we've been discussing.
Maybe it's too because kind of maybe the opposite of that, though, slightly of like he doesn't have a strong grasp on who he is because he is kind of split basically both worlds there. He knows he's a Greyjoy, the Ironborn. Basically, they're supposed to be these types of people, but he grew up kind of as a Stark of Winterfell, so he is kind of he's not completely sure who he is as a person basically within the world there. He doesn't know where he really belongs in the world, so he gets swayed probably more towards being okay. My father thinks I should be this person. He is my father, so I probably should be this person, kind of. Great question there, though. Nick, do you have any kind of thing you want to touch on a little bit from this episode?
Yeah, I had a question. You'd mentioned earlier here that there are so many new faces that we meet. Stannis, Lysandra. We're introduced to a little bit more of the dynamic between some of these families with sort of at the end of the first season, but a little bit into this season, like you said, Tywin telling Tyrion he's going to go be the Hand of the King, a role that he was holding. I'm really interested in what your all's thoughts are on the family dynamics here. I mean, it seems like, I think Tywin has a couple lines there where he's dissecting the stag or in the field, talking about just how family is all we have, and then when you die, all you have is the legacy of what your children leave you. But it's really interesting because there really isn't, a nuclear family in the sense of these relationships where someone is, really in love with their parents, or the siblings between the Lannisters, or even the Starks. There's a whole book that can be written on how Ned Stark treated his kids, and you're there, stay there. We'll talk about your mother when next time we see each other. And there's this unwritten, chasm of information that apparently no one else really knows. And Catelyn Stark trying to, be the helicopter mom. And so I was just curious what your all's thoughts are on, is this how families seem to just be in this world that's being created? Or do we think that there's, what other options could these families do? Or is this just kind of the world that's we've been introduced to? This is the normal that family life is.
I guess I'll start off on that one, and it seems to me very much that this is a taken from a old medieval idea of what a family is. And so you have a dynasty, and that dynasty is connected obviously by lineage going down, but you might not actually have that close familial relationship. And I'm reminded about King Richard the Lionheart's brother, whose name I'm going to forget. I should remember it, but I forget him, who rebelled against, basically started the downfall of the Avignon Empire. You have one of the, and I'm going to, right before Napoleon invaded Spain, one of the reasons he was able to invade Spain was because the son of the king, the only son of the king, decided he didn't like his dad. And so, I mean, there's a lot of precedent for these noble lineages and dynasties thinking so much of themselves and having that very distant relationship between each other to the point where it creates this kind of weird disaffect where you can see your brother, your mother, your father as a complete enemy to your goals because you are only in it for the glory. You're only in it to create your own dynasty or continue the dynasty in the way you see best. Obviously, that doesn't work well for Jaime and Cersei, who have a weird relationship. And but it does fit well and calls well to me for that medieval kind of sense of what you would call a dynasty relationship.
I do like that historical perspective. That's very good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it does seem to fit the whole like back then. I mean, if you didn't have a family or a place, like you weren't having nothing, and especially these noble families, if they want to stay noble, keep their power, like if they don't have their family, they don't have any connections, which they're not going to get anywhere.
His name was John, by the way. Richard the Lionheart's brother. His name was John.
I thought that, but I didn't want to say it because I thought I may be wrong.
I'm now thinking of that joke from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. From all the land, from now until henceforth, all the toilets in the land will be known as John.
Ah.
Yeah.
I think just kind of going to your question there too, Nick. I probably don't really have much to really add with what everyone says. Although, kind of all the families, though, it seems kind of like the Starks are maybe the more not really close knit family. I mean, they definitely have their own subsections of each one. Like Sansa, obviously, is slightly, off on her own side. They're more maybe like towards Catelyn's Tully side there, or, John is obviously the one, the white wolf of the family there, basically, because he is the bastard. See what I did there? But yeah, like I would definitely say they're, Ned Stark's line from season 1 is like the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. So that's kind of the Stark model there of basically like no matter what, you always have family to kind of go to. Whereas like you kind of touched on there from season 1, Tywin views family basically as the means to keep power contained within the group there. I think the mean to consolidate power.
They've got a variety of them too, just like in real life. Some families are super close and 100% depend on each other, and others are crazy and God, they can't stand each other.
Sure. Absolutely. I like the thought you said there, Tyler, about the pack survives. I think that the Starks view each other, even though Arya really doesn't get along with Sansa, she sees what Sansa is supposed to do. She's supposed to marry rich and keep the family as a noble, prominent house. The pack, like animals, a pack has designated roles for everyone within that group. Whereas you look at the Lannisters, and Cersei would rather just kill Tyrion if she got the chance. And Jaime is just, like you were alluding to, a means to an end. She cares about his person, but maybe more carnally than, he's the person I can't live without, from what we've seen thus far. And yeah, it's interesting, some of these different dynamics, and I think all of you hit the nail on the head to my question. It strikes me as so odd that when one of them is seen as this is a problem, nobody jumps in to say, oh yeah, it should go to this person. Everybody's got that little Iago in their theater reference. Everyone's got that little Iago that's telling them, oh, you should have the throne. Oh, you should be the person to throw your name in the hat. Nobody steps up to really say it should go to this person. And so yeah, you're fine. I'm rambling, but yeah, that thought of no one's there to back each other up. Everybody's kind of out for themselves.
So I have a question to kind of piggyback off of your question, and that's everyone views Tywin Lannister as this master strategist, brilliant genius, creating everything out of nothing sort of dude. When he creates his family, we just talked about it right now, dysfunctional as hell. And in this world, the dynasty is what matters. Did he create anything that actually matters? In that case, if his dynasty is dysfunctional, does it matter what else he's doing? It's not going to survive past him. I mean, in a theoretical sense, I guess I should say there.
I think to him, he thinks it is going to survive. All he can see is he has a son, is a great swordsman. He's got a daughter on the throne. His grandchildren are, well, his grandson is on the throne, and the other ones. So I don't think he can see past that to see the dysfunctions and problems that show that it's not very stable.
Yep.
So that's what I mean. We look at him as some master strategist, as some brilliant thinker. If he can't see that, is he?
Very blind.
I would say because everyone else seems so short-sighted. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And so perhaps he seems such a smart tactician by default because everyone else is just kind of, how do I survive the day? He's planning for next week.
And I would say too, probably he's too probably big picture when he's thinking
Yeah.
about the dynasty. He doesn't really want to know or know about, I guess, really the minor details of the thing between his son and daughter there, Tyrion and not Jamie and Cersei there. He despises his son Tyrion there, but like he still technically keeps Tyrion around because by God darn it, he's a Lannister. And a Lannister means something there, and
Yep.
he does have grandchildren on the throne. So he kind of views probably more a lot of his family as the chess pieces there to the board, where he is thinking many moves out there of how this would work, but he doesn't have the the small details probably under control like like he thinks he does. All right. Anyone else have any kind of questions that kind of they wanted to throw out for this first episode there? Take the deafening silence as a no. One thing I did want to touch on there was basically the episode ends with kind of a shocking scene that happens there. This is when the Gold Cloaks break into all of the brothels and places around the city of King's Landing there to basically take care of, throw the words the air quotes around, take care of Robert Baratheon's bastards there to kind of eliminate one more thing that could probably rise to challenge the Lannister claim to the throne. And I say Lannister claim to the throne because Joffrey is basically being somewhat controlled by his mother.
Truth. Do we, clarification, do we know who gave the order to the Gold Cloaks at this point?
I think that is touched on, I think it is like hinted at by
I think it's in the next episode. Yeah.
But I think it's clarified though on the next episode of where it came from.
Just, the scene itself is just shocking, deplorable, horrifying, right? I mean, because, some of the, they break into the Littlefinger's brothel, and some of them are babes who can't defend themselves, literally ripped from their mothers. And some are, teenage young men who are just brought out and slaughtered, who either don't know or might have an inkling that they could be. And so, there's a lot to unpack there for sure. I think the main takeaway for me is that it really highlights the brutality that the people in power are willing to go to maintain that power. And again, it's sad to say, but you see that in the real world,
Yep.
right now going on, the brutality that some people are willing to do upon others for either perceived slights or the worry that someone could become something powerful. And so I'm going to strike first, but in striking first, it's, is that justified? And that's human history, unfortunately.
And I was thinking the exact same thing as you from that historical perspective. I mean, you talk about the Ottoman Empire. Whenever a new sultan came on the throne, the first thing the sultan would do was kill every single other royal member. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And it's historically accurate. It's, I don't know, it's terrifying. People like to romanticize about living in this sort of stuff. I'm really glad I don't. And I will never romanticize living about this time period at all, ever.
As a female, I can 100% second that. Ever.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting that the fact that we're sitting here debating amongst ourselves if we ever find out who gives the direct order. No one explains this to the people. So I don't know if it was in the show or if it's in the books. But, I mean, Tyrion gets blamed for it because they already hate him. So they just attribute everything to him.
Right.
Tyrion did not do it.
We have that, omnipotent perspective of, multiple storylines, the watcher who will not interact. But in the storyline, the context of these people's lives, a power that you can't stop because they're gold cloaks and knights or whatever, the King's Watch comes in, just murders your family and leaves.
Right.
There's no justification. There's no pleading your case or nothing.
And you don't know why. So this could go down in history since no one explained to the populace what was going on. That, one day the hated hand of the king just murdered a bunch of babies for no reason.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. we will now shift over to episode 2, The Nightlands. All right, the synopsis for this episode was Arya makes friends with Gendry. Tyrion tries to take control of the small council. Theon arrives at his home, Pike, in order to persuade his father into helping Robb with the war. And Jon tries to investigate Craster's secret. We didn't really touch on Jon there much in that last episode there. It was basically just the Night's Watch arriving at Craster's Keep there and Jon kind of seeing what it is. So just kind of as a reminder for the viewers here, Craster's Keep was basically this one guy out in the wilderness surviving by himself. Not really by himself. He basically had a bunch of wives / daughters. One and the same, a lot of them were. Most of them, if not all of them. And he is basically Jon is basically talked to by Jeor Mormont, the Lord Commander, about like this is one of the necessary evils we have to put up with as members of the Night's Watch. Otherwise, we would not really survive out here in the wilderness. Let's see. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead to like the kind of, I think it was more the end of the episode there with my first question I wanted to talk about is, so we see Jon basically following Craster out into the wilderness there with his newborn son. And then all of a sudden there is, I can't remember if it is a White Walker that shows up at there or not. I think it is.
It is.
And Jon then panics and basically tries to run back, and then Craster finds him and knocks him out there, basically. So kind of, I mean, it's probably maybe a simple answer, but like, what do we kind of think that, like, what is Craster doing with all of his infant sons, sorry, not infinite sons, but his infant sons and the White Walkers there?
It's a great transition from brutality on unsuspecting babes.
Actually, go for it.
At this point in the story, we don't know. We just know that he has, because I think even Jon mentions, like, what does he do with his sons? And so there's something that people are thinking, contemplating, surely. But at this point, we don't know. It's just we see that this thing, because I don't think we've seen a White Walker in broad daylight yet. This thing grabs the babe. And I don't think like we see it pick it up or carry it away. I think it just like kneels down next to it and then like does a quick cutaway or something like that. I'm trying to remember. And so we don't know, is it eating the babies or is it like, it's taking them for some dark purpose? But something, unnatural, surely. Sorry, what were you going to say, Stephen?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that we watched this a week ago and we get to that part and I remarked to Amanda immediately going, oh my God, I forgot about this. Horrible. But yeah, I think the White Walker does pick up the baby, and it's at that point that Jon goes, oh, what? Turns around, gets just smacked on the side of the head by Craster, and that is the end of the episode. So you don't know at all. And I will be honest, I don't even remember if it ends up explaining what exactly happens to those babies. It's a huge mystery for me, and I am horrified by it. I'm horrified by the entire concept of Craster, and yeah.
Do the horror aspect rather well for that. Like, we don't know what's going on. It's unknown. It's scary. It's supernatural for everyone. Us and there's a baby. Yes. The babies in King's Landing, Stephen was like, God, that's unfortunate, but this baby is a different matter.
Yeah, it seems like there's some kind of pact for whatever reason between Craster and these White Walkers, which is the strangest kind of thing there, but it's...
How did that get started?
Yeah,
is there a contract that was drawn up once upon a time?
Did he like just walk out to some guy?
Hey, bro.
Hey, yo,
can I interest you in some male babies? Can I sell you some male babies?
Yeah, it's definitely like one of the more interesting parts of the show there for sure. Kind of going to our boy Theon, which we touched on a little bit there. I think we kind of covered in there, but I kind of wrote down a question of like, Theon definitely appears confident in his return. Like he's coming back to Pike, and like everyone will be there waiting for him. And we kind of touched on this in like our discussion of Theon there about the previous episode there, but it's like Theon is definitely pretty confident in his return there. That he thinks like everything will go this certain way. Don't you all think?
I mean, it starts off with him screwing the captain's wife as he's sailing over to the islands and saying, "Take me as your salt wife," and he's like, "Nah,
Right.
you go do your thing," and all this sort of stuff. He is ultra confident. Gets off the ship, expects things to be there for him. Finds this one chick who just happens to be oddly, I don't know, resemblance. Who knows? We'll find out. Whatever. But it just decides, yeah, I'm going to make you my next conquest. Hey, babe, why don't you, ride up to the castle with me? Just when you say confidence, he is just brimming with the idea that he will be welcomed as a king and a hero. He's literally going to get all the women. And that just walks into his father's room and gets a brick in the face.
Yeah, he's very much ready for his parade.
Yeah.
I almost feel bad for him.
Sorry, if you're done with that one, I'll touch on that absolutely. You almost feel sorry for him. That was the theme that I thought a lot when seeing this part of the episode, because it's this whole show is kind of built up that all these people are these poor characters who just get perpetually crapped on by fate, and it's the opposite. Everybody kind of seems tentative, or the world is crap, or Tyrion's just like the world's going to be shit, just to make the most out of it. But yeah, like from the first time we meet Theon, he's banging some chick in the stables, and then he goes home and he expects to be welcomed back as a hero, and he's like almost, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's almost like the highest riding character in the whole show at this point. Like the world is doing well. I'm a hostage, period. But I'm treated like one of the sons of the Starks. It's like that's a pretty darn good, situation. And he comes home thinking I'm going to be the one sire to be on the Salt Throne, to be the next king. And yet no one is there to welcome him. You almost feel sorry for him is the thought that I get. Your point, excellent point by Amanda there. That I would emphasize the same thing, Tyler.
All right.
I think Nick, I think you're right too. I think he is easily the most optimistic character up to this point. Everything's going to go well. He thinks everything's going to be fine. Rob's going to win. He's going to have his best buddy on the king, or a best buddy as a king. And yeah, I didn't think about it until you said it, but yeah, he is easily the most optimistic character up until this point.
I think he foresees he's going to go back home, get his father to join him. And yeah, he'll end up owning the Iron Islands and bringing their fleet. His buddy Rob will win the South, and things will just carry on where there's this great alliance between the Starks and the Ironborns, and it is just going to be all roses. And it just sort of has this undertone with what we've seen so far in the show that the world doesn't always work out the way you hope it does.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Interesting. Also, I thought that could go both ways. That Robb Stark agreed to send Theon, but didn't send anybody with him.
Right.
Which could be a gesture of good faith, saying, "Here is your son. There are no strings attached." But it could also be incredibly naive, depending entirely on how you look at it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you could argue that if he had sent somebody with him, Balon Greyjoy would have been like, "Oh, see, you're just being controlled." But it's still, you think he'd want someone, another person. I mean, he sent Catelyn Stark. Granted, she was a girl, but with an escort down to Renly.
I think we made that comment in this conversation already. That yeah, we're judging that from the perspective that it didn't go well or was poorly received. I mean, if he went and was able to convince his father, and his father's like, "Yeah, let's go help the Starks. I hate the Lannister Baratheons." And that went well, would we be singing a different story?
Totally.
Sure, but I mean, you roll a 20 on a D20 1 out of 20 times. You should try to bet for a lower chance.
Right, right. Maybe Theon's high flying days are doomed to come down, but are they doomed to come down because of the situation he's in, or because he's betting so high that he has nowhere to go but down?
That's a good point. Because is there anything Theon could have, and this is why I said I had complicated views on Theon. I don't think there's anything Theon could have done to reverse the course of how this episode goes and as he gets there, he's basically told, yeah, you're basically second in line after your sister. We're not going to make friends with the Starks. We're going to make war on the Starks. We're not going to do anything that you want. What's he supposed to do? I don't think there's anything he could have done. And I think it's a Greek tragedy. You're watching this person go do something that you hope they can do. They can't do it, and they get taken by the turn of events. And there's nothing he could do about it. Any decision to refute his father, honestly, maybe if he refuted his father, it might have gone well. Who knows? He might have respected that. But he doesn't, he can't, and he's taken down a different path. And I'm firmly, he does not walk down that path, he is taken down a different path.
I back that wholeheartedly. I love the analogy of a Greek tragedy. He's constantly trying to do, in his mind, what is the right thing. I'm going to go help my good buddy the Starks who have treated me well. Right? Mm-hmm. My father says different. All right, well, I'm an Ironborn. I'm going to do what my father wants me to do and my family tells me I should do. Yeah, and just no matter what he shoots for to accomplish, he has other things in mind. I love that analogy.
Well, you mentioned earlier family too, Nick, and I think that's a good point in this case because if he could have possibly refuted him, but everyone would still have despised him then for betraying his family, even though he went there with a certain purpose.
Yeah, he walks in, and I think the dad says something like, "You smell like a Stark" or something. You know, he's already viewed as an outsider, even though that's how he's coming home in his mind.
Yeah, I think it's not to toot my own horn over here, but it's like the point I made about he just doesn't know who he is really as a person. There, he's conflicted between, again, the Stark and the Greyjoy side of him.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and just to kind of change topics here, Nick. Throw it over to you for some questioning.
I think you said in this episode, this is the one where Tyrion has one of his first council meetings, isn't it?
Is it the last one or was it this one?
I think
one of his first ones, definitely.
I think so. I think, yeah, he definitely has some work. I have a note written down about some work he does as far as with small council.
At the very least, interacting with the different members, right? He's back now. He's established that I'm going to be the new hand of the king. Everyone kind of takes it like, what? But then, like, he has a couple one-off meetings too, where I think like he confronts Varys. He talks with Littlefinger a little bit too, and even if it's not at the table, in some form with the other people. Just walking around town. One of the questions I had with this is, we've discussed a little bit about how Tyrion is perceived, but at this point in the story, we don't know if it's to his detriment or not. But he persists in saying, "I'm going to change the status quo. Everyone's going to kind of toe the line. Everyone's going to do what I say to do." What are our thoughts with what we know this far in the story? Do we think that that's wise? Is that Tyrion just being boisterous, or does he actually think he can change the status quo? Again, we've talked a little bit about like people's playing the long game versus I'm just going to survive the day. What are your thoughts there on his motives?
I admired it a lot, honestly. Like, he was going to try to make things better. And he wanted to help, and he wanted to do that. But he also didn't want to be an idiot. He wanted to make sure he went about the smart. He knew he was dealing with some dangerous people.
So to go off on that, is he playing it smart? Because I do believe that he believes he can change it.
Yeah.
Say what you want about Tyrion, he is not short on ego. He has an outsized view of himself that I believe isn't actually even justified. I believe he believes more of himself than he is actually capable of. And that makes him, and the guy, no one watching it, no one listening to this would have seen me, but we started talking about Tyrion. I did a little swagger thing with my shirt going on because he comes in and he's just full of swagger. Absolute, just the definition of it. And that, I think, doesn't ingratiate him to anyone. I mean, nobody really likes him in the first place, but he's going in there and he's instantly making enemies. One of the first things he does in this episode is replace Gino Slant, the captain of the guard.
Yes, thank you.
Because doesn't. Yeah, Geno Slant isn't under his command, so he puts Braun in his place. In the books, it's Gold Hand, which I talked about last episode, or whatever his name, Iron Hand. But anyways, but he puts a new commander of the guard in charge, specifically under him, and specifically upsetting a whole bunch of people. In a way that would upset more people, and it's one of those more. He's being very brash about his actions with a swagger that I don't think he can continue to back up, because all he needs is one thing to go wrong and everything comes crashing down. If you rule based on swagger and power, this first opening your enemies see, that's where you're gone.
I think both of you have a really good point there about how brash it is and how for lack of a better word, ballsy it is. But I do really think that it's a genius move, answering a little bit of my own question, to make the first person that you switch out to, thank you for bringing that up, is someone who can defend you, right? As he puts in Braun, so Braun's in charge of, if people are going to go be aggressive, the general or the city guard leader is someone who's very close to me. I can get what's going on. But also I have someone who can protect me who's sort of covered on that as well. So, yeah, very excellent points, both of you.
So
sorry.
I was going to say, I would kind of echo just a little bit of both of yours points there. I'm sure Tyrion believes he could go in there and change things, but he has a good idea of what he's up against. He knows King's Landing is not on the up and up. Basically, everybody has backdoor dealings with one another. Everyone will backstab you at the first chance they get to base, if they see it as a chance to get themselves more power control within the world there. And yes, like one of the first things he does is try to make himself surrounded. He basically tries to remove a yes man from Cersei's control with Janos Slynt, and basically I think puts the blame for the slaughter of the Baratheon bastards there on Janos Slynt, and that's what then gets him sent to the wall. But he basically tries to, he's playing the game basically just like Cersei is. Or he might think he's better at it because he thinks he's the smartest person in the room all the time anywhere he goes, and a lot of times he kind of is, because he's the more level-headed person, I would probably say, out of a lot of the people that he interacts with. But he's also too, he knows he needs to start surrounding himself too with people he can trust to kind of keep a lookout for him and everything. But I will say, like, speaking of character interactions, like, this is the first interaction we have with Tyrion talking to Varys, and it's kind of like it's kind of a start of a friendship that kind of progresses throughout the show. Not to spoil too much about what's to come, but it's kind of like one of my favorite things that kind of happens, especially with like a lot of these earlier parts of the show there, of the conversations between characters is a lot of what makes this show so great. So the conversation that Tyrion always has with Varys is always really interesting there.
Yeah, I do think there was a few times where Tyrion could have held back a little bit, but for the most part, there was no way he was going to succeed with everything. But when he sent Janos Slynt to the wall, I applauded. I was psyched.
Absolutely.
But I do think that if he was meek or like humble, I think he would have gotten eaten alive. I don't think there was a good way for him to really win, but Ned
Sure,
was
and
a little
actually,
meeker.
yeah, I actually think Tyler had a fantastic point there that he is playing the same game Cersei's playing. He's not playing a different game. He thinks he can play the same game better, though. So that is Cersei's game has garnered her a lot of enemies. And maybe that is Tyrion's fundamental flaw in the ruling, is that he can only see one game to play, and that game isn't a winning game. It is a powerful game. It's a game of kings, but it's not really a winning game.
I,
And maybe he's playing the same game but playing it better, still a losing game. Sorry.
I would say they're playing the same game, but they're playing the game differently. Tyrion, it's another point I kind of wrote down here. Like, Cersei is more reckless with how she kind of plays the game there as it goes on, because she's assuming she's got all of these people around her, her way or the highway, kind of with everything. Power is power, basically. I think that's a line that comes up at some point in time in the show from her.
Yeah.
So
This episode.
okay,
Mhm.
so she basically thinks that fear is kind of the way to do everything there, and it only works obviously for so long in any situation kind of throughout life. But Tyrion is kind of playing it with more of a level head, basically. Like, he's not so, I don't think he's so controlled like Cersei is on emotions or perceived slights. Tyrion is kind of more, I think it's maybe the difference between Cersei and Tyrion. Cersei thinks she is equal to everyone else and is playing the long game, when really she's not playing the long enough game. Whereas Tyrion is maybe playing the longer game than what Cersei is.
I guess I'm not 100% sure on that, just because, like we're saying, one of the first things that Tyrion does is to come in here with swagger stick on, dismissing people left and right, and doing what he wants because he has the power to do it. He sends Janos Slynt to the wall because he can.
But
And
I was going to say, though, I think, though, that's because he knows he has to eliminate a lot of these people there to kind of...
but isn't that exactly what Cersei does? She has to eliminate these people. She sees it as she has to.
She's had years and years and years in power to place a lot of people in a lot of key positions. She has a lot of resources. And Tyrion does have many victories, several victories at first. It's hard to fight against that kind of power base that you've been building up for so long.
And I think,
Absolutely.
too, Cersei's maybe more of, like, entrenched in how her thinking is going, whereas Tyrion is obviously coming to the game as a fresher player, so he's able to, he knows the game, and he knows the rules kind of the game, that he has to surround himself with more people, so he's able to kind of, again, surround himself, but also from a perspective that's maybe, like, Cersei is surrounding herself with basically yes men because she wants to, and this is really touched on a lot in the books, that she appoints people to positions of power that she feels she can control because she knows how to do everything. Whereas Tyrion, it seems like, is more appointing to people to position of powers who, yes, will help his cause, but also they have somewhat of a general knowledge of how things should go. Like, appointing Bronn
More of a meritocracy.
Sure. Yeah, like, he appoints Bronn to the Gold Cloaks there. Bronn obviously is not the most law and order type person, but Bronn understands kind of, like, how to go about patrolling, like, the lower class people there, because Bronn is not a highborn person.
Sure, he's not a rabid dog looking to get off the leash. I mean, from what we know of General Slynt, I don't think it would have taken much prodding from whoever gave that order to go kill those babies. You know, he just was like, "All right, sure, go do it." Whereas Braun, you know, it's like, these are, you know, common folk people. Have you ever seen a mother with a baby, you know, type thing?
But that's explicitly touched on in the show, at least, and that's, I mean, they say when Tyrion replaces Janos Slynt, he says, "Yeah, no, he replaced him."
Would you
Braun,
kill a baby
if I asked you to kill a whole bunch of babies, would you? And he says, "No, I would ask you how much first." So,
Yeah.
I mean,
true.
that's kind of what we like about Braun. I'll be honest. He's, I mean, paid to do whatever,
Pragmatic.
but yes. So I understand what I think. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I think I understand where Tyler's coming from. I mean, in terms of he's doing. I still think he's doing the same thing Cersei's doing, just doing it better, and he's putting into place like people, like you said, are more competent at what they do. Not necessarily different morals, not necessarily going to play it different, but they're better at what they do.
Yeah. Did you have kind of anything further to touch on there, Nick? Kind of kept interrupting you slightly.
Oh, that's fine. All very valid points. A great discussion. I forget who specifically alluded to it, but all of you kind of did too. These people like Theon we were discussing who just get kind of, roughshod, ran over, versus, the relationships between some of these people when a player finds someone else who is, to stick with this game sort of mentality, when we find a player that meets their equal, those conversations are really interesting. The Varys and Tyrion, or the Cersei and Tyrion, Tywin, when he talks to his kids. It's fun to watch these people who we see as like unbreakable. Oh, hey, this person knows what they're doing and knows how to talk, and what happens in those conversations is really rich to watch.
All right, Amanda, do you have some questions for us to kind of cover?
What do you guys think about Dany's journey through the wilderness there? Looks miserable, as all of us, I'm sure, felt.
As Gary is a avid Joffrey fanatic, I am an avid Dany hater. And
Dany hater?
I'm a hater.
I'm a hater.
I don't like Dany.
At this point in the story, is there a quick, elevator pitch as to why you dislike her at this point in the story?
Okay. At this point in the story, I just think she's kind of pointless. She got a little bit of stuff done. Then she gets her husband killed because she doesn't understand the Dothraki ways. And then she gets her husband resurrected and burned because she doesn't understand the Dothraki ways. And then she goes out into the wilderness. Like, it's her period in the wilderness. She's marching in the desert. There's, I don't know. I didn't like her at any point in the series. That's just
fair.
Something that I have.
That's fair.
It's not rational.
That is true for him. He never liked her. Because at this point, I was like, why? She's 14. She didn't do anything wrong. Like, what is happening?
I think my thought on Dany, since we're focusing on Dany right now, is I agree wholeheartedly with the reasons why. I guess I saw it more as she's not pointless. She just hasn't gotten into her story quite yet. Very much like Theon, I see her as a victim of circumstance where, hey, my brother treated me like trash, now I belong to the Dothraki. I kind of am trying to learn Dothraki, trying to, educate my husband into what it could be if I was an equal member in this, monarchy or this hierarchy. And then he dies. And so to me, it's not so much that her story is pointless. It hasn't really gotten any traction yet. She's kind of just like, whatever, there. My question, my response to your question, Amanda, is really, I thought that Dany walking through the wilderness is such a huge shift in where she was, because kind of the end of season 1 is her dragons have hatched, these eggs, and she's kind of like, she's the unburnt. I don't know if she's gotten that title or not, or people have referred to her as that. But she has dragons. Somehow the fire didn't kill her. It definitely got rid of her enemies, the witch lady. And she's like, holy cows, there is some story here that's to be told, or some, arc and whatever's going to happen. And then, we see, just like Steven said, here's her time in the desert, her time of tribulation. And she's like, how can I lead when we're all starving and dying? I don't know where we're going. I'm in a foreign land. And it's this huge power shift from, I can, be the great leader. Because she even has, I think, a big speech at the end of season 1 before she steps in the fire, right? Your enemies, if you join me, your enemies will burn in the fire and we'll take over everything and whatever. But then in this shift, she's like done nothing and she has no power. And it's revealed that she's just a victim of circumstance. So yeah, my thought is, as far as Dany goes, her time in the desert is winning. She's losing. Where does she go from here?
Right, and what do you do after that kind of victory where you've survived a fire, you've gotten dragons, and now you're like, so what now? You're wandering through a desert, starving and dying.
Absolutely. Every hero arc has that moment where you realize, destiny has been thrust upon you. Now what do you do? Right? How do I use this great gift or this great talent? What's my purpose? What's my destiny? And I think that she's got a lot of questions and a lot of self-doubt in that first little scene.
I would kind of say here too, to touch on some of the points you were making earlier there. I think that was you, Nick, of she's not quite the author yet in her own story. She has been kind of pushed along through everything so far there. Of like, she was pushed into marrying. She kind of took some ownership somewhat as she kind of learned to kind of start having Khal Drogo kind of accept her as his, not really equal, but his companion. And then that was all kind of pulled away from her because of her naivete. That's the word. Her naivete with the witch there, basically, that ended up not doing what she said she was going to do for helping Khal Drogo. And then she really kind of starts to somewhat, when she makes the choice to kind of step into the fire there, basically to then birth the dragons, as we come to find at the end of the season 1, she starts to take that ownership. And then she's leading now her Khalasar basically in through the desert to escape the other Dothraki that would be out there to hunt them. And so she's slowly kind of coming to learn that, this is part of taking ownership of my own life and kind of being the ruler of others, is I have these tough decisions to make kind of in life of what do we do next.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. There's a lot of things that have happened to her thus far, but none of it has been her own making. I mean, the unburnt, the mother of dragons. I don't think that, had her husband not gotten the dragon eggs, she would have ever realized that was in her destiny, right? I mean, I believe in the backstory before the show we're watching, she was born on Dragonstone. Dany has never seen a dragon. She knows that the Targaryens used to have them, and her brothers told lots of stories from when he was a babe, but when he was a young toddler, dragons were no bigger than the size of a cat, I think is a line that's used in the story or something like that at this point in history. And so, the great, grand, perceived history that they're trying to reinstate is just fairy tales, more or less. There's nothing tangible that she can pull from. So, yeah, even though she is a Targaryen and she knows her brother was maybe somebody special, kind of going back to what I said earlier, there's a lot of self-doubt that is this true or was this stuff that we were just told? Trying to pen her own story, like you were saying, Tyler.
Do you have anything else, kind of, Amanda, to point out?
Nope, it's not a very big section of the story, but I think it's important to keep up with her as she goes.
Yes.
Very true.
Steven, what do you got for us?
I'm going to pivot us to the inimitable Stannis, who I will pivot back to several times because I find him so interesting as a horrible human being. And that's going to kind of give away where I'm going here. So a couple of things that Stannis's arc does during this specific one episode is hiring a pirate, having sex with the red lady,
Woman. Oh, you're right, red woman.
The red woman, to try to birth different thing, a whole bunch of very non-chivalrous acts for the chivalrous king. We've kind of talked about a whole bunch of these other characters and their arcs and their stories and how they are kind of forced into their path. What do we think about Stannis? Because I think Stannis is somebody with a lot of agency in his life. And I think that none of these other characters have that agency. And Stannis is making these bad decisions for himself, or these, I should say, reprehensible decisions for himself. And if we're looking for a character who is probably, weirdly enough, a bad person, it's Stannis for me.
I back that wholeheartedly. I'll speak really quickly and I'll be quiet because I talk way too much. But I think that Tyler smiles. I think that where we say Danny is trying to like put pen to paper is like, what's my story going to be? I think Stannis is just out there like, blazing through what he wants his story to be. But you're very right. He's writing like every horrible thing. It's like, and then the protagonist does this. No, he decides to murder everyone instead, And then the protagonist, we've been introduced. I think his wife and his daughter are standing on the beach, when they first light the seven and they say the prayer to the seven. And Davos is, kind of apprehensive about, hey, this is not cool. These are gods we're not familiar with. And he's like, whatever, we'll say the words anyways. And my wife and my child are here. We've established in the show they exist. But at the first chance that Melisandre offers herself, it doesn't seem to take much prodding for him to be like, sure, why not? And they just, go to
on the
town.
table. Yeah, on the table. That's what it's for, right?
this nice ornate table we've described earlier in Dragonstone. Yeah, I think that he's definitely writing his story. He knows where he wants to be, but it's, and again, we're blessed with the omnipotent view of everybody else's story to compare him to. But yeah, he's just making every immoral, horrendous choice that his character could. I mean, he tries to have some redemption where he says at first, like, are you kidding me? I'm married. No. But then it's like, leave the room or, something. Or he's currently the king and she's like his mistress at that point. In his ear, he could just order her away or something. But she knows either magically or not that this is what he needs to do, and just prods him just a bit more. It's not like she's like, you have to do this or whatever. It's just like, I think she like just opens her dress or something, isn't it? He's like, well, since you're already half dressed, it's like he just jumps right in. It doesn't seem like there's much there. So yeah, it seems he's willing to make the wrong choice.
He's really hard to like. And that's the thing. Even the people can sense it. Like, there's people across the Westeros that are like, well, if Joffrey's not the real king, then Stannis is. But no one likes him. So let's go maybe to Renly or another option.
Right.
And everybody senses it. Everyone does that. And maybe it's because of his age, I don't know. But, like, I have a lot harder time feeling sympathy for him because I was like, you're, like Stephen said, making all your decisions. And yeah, he wasn't very loved as a child, and he doesn't really feel a lot of that love now, but God, try something, dude.
So I would kind of argue somewhat the opposite of he's trying to make his own decisions. He's trying to so we touched on this right away kind of at the beginning of this episode here of the prophecy, the Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised. There, it is talked. We didn't touch about it too much there from the first episode. It is kind of prophesized that he is the prince who was promised, the one who will bring lightness to the darkness, to drive back the darkness from the realm. There, we'll have to look this up for the next episode, kind of what the whole prophecy of the prince who was promised talks about there. But he has been prophesized as being this person who will bring about the light to the coming, he will be the one to fight the coming darkness there. So I would say more he's not making the choices based off of anything other than maybe trying to think he is fulfilling the prophecy there. So he sleeps with the red woman there because she promises him a son, basically, which he does not have right now. And as we know kind of from the story here, sons are the key to continuing your family's lineage there. They take over after you die. So he does not have a son currently, so the red woman promises him a son to kind of continue on his lineage. And then, two, he burns the 7 idols for the gods of the 7 there because they are now converting to the the Lord of Light. And I keep reading the name over and over in the book, and now the name escapes me. But he's converting to that religion there, basically, because that's what the Red Woman has preordained, that he is Azor Ahai. They're basically the one to fight the coming darkness.
That's a do the ends justify the means question.
And for someone in his status, who Stannis is so big on every law being perfectly fulfilled, we're talking about ends being the means. Davos smuggled supplies in for him, and he rewarded him by cutting off his fingers.
Right.
I mean, he is one that the law applies to everyone but himself, and that's what I don't like him for that reason. He is the only character that we see go out and harm Davos. I hate you for harming Davos, sir. He's the only character that we see hire a pirate. He's the only character that we see try to create some mumbo jumbo magic baby with the Red Woman. He's making all these decisions which, by law, he should probably be prosecuted for, maybe executed for. I don't really know the laws of their lands, but presumably there are laws against hiring pirates. Why doesn't it apply to him? Why is this king above the law? While all these other kings, Renly is very much not above the law. Renly is right there on par with the law, and that's what he makes himself very out to be. Robb is very on par with the law. That's what he makes himself out to be. There is no law for Joffrey, and that's why everyone hates him. And yeah. I don't understand. And that same thing, I believe, should apply to Stannis.
That goes back to, I think, what Tyler was talking about with, he's trying to fulfill this prophecy. I mean, if the prophecy says you're an untouchable, above the law deity, more or less,
sure.
Then, do you have to adhere to society's laws? And so that's then, doesn't ends justify the means? And again, is that, where's your source coming from? Well, the woman I'm sleeping with, But
yeah, the woman I'm sleeping with tells me that I am the chosen one. I believe her.
Right? I believe her. I want to do everything she tells me to do. So, again, we mock and we can joke in that situation, but yeah, for the knowledge that they probably have at this period in this story, in this fictitious context, that could be just all it needs to make somebody like Stannis, the laws are the laws. Well, your laws are false because my God tells me so, and I can do some magic. She does have some magical abilities that we've seen thus far. So perhaps whatever she's doing is the truth, and I've been living a lie, and I should do whatever I need to do. Which then, answering my own question, I could see more of Tyler's "the ends justify the means." Earth is flat. You get shown enough evidence to the contrary, typically. Then, okay, now the world is round. And then that's where I jump from.
Or vice versa in this case.
Where the laws no longer apply to me, to your point, Stephen, and now I'm going to adhere to a new set of principles that to everyone else seems abhorrent, but to Tyler's point, puts me in direct line to be the prophecy fulfillment for Azor Ahai. Good question. I'm with you, though. Stan sucks.
Got any more good questions over there for us, Stephen?
Craster sucks. It's not more. I have less of a question, more of a statement. It's Craster sucks.
Yes.
Would it be easier to make a list of people you do like?
It really would. It really would. Something everyone should know about me in these book series. There aren't very many characters that I particularly like. Love the series, hate the characters, which is good.
Definitely.
Very much so. Very much so. I think, Amanda, you made the comment about, and Stephen too, we wouldn't want to live in this time period. Even by today's standards, where people are very materialistic, people are very, very cynical, people are, sometimes very prone to doing things that hurt one another. These people are horrible people. You love the story, and we're drawn to the antagonistic, warring and dissension and bitterness that these groups have against one another. there's very few people that are just pure-hearted people. Maybe Robb Stark for trying to avenge his father, but that's wrath and vengeance. There's pride and jealousy and hatred from most of the Lannisters and all this stuff. But there's very few people who are pure, except Samwell Tarly.
Bless his heart.
Bless his heart. I'm gonna say I'm gonna transition just to talk a little bit about Sam. I think that he is. We've mentioned naivete, naive pureness of heart. I think Sam fulfills a lot of that, just because he's so innocent in the way the game is played. He doesn't really do anything, like we said, authoring your own story and being the master of your own universe. That's not even Sam, right? Like, he's just trying to survive the day, not wreck anyone else's in the process. And Sam, sort of the story with Craster and this story with trying to what's going on in his friendship that's forming at this point in the story with Jon. Sam just is like, hey, someone seems hurt. This gal said that she needs help. Like, the threat of death from Craster doesn't even factor into that. It's just, this gal says she needs help with her baby. Jon, what should we do? Jon's like, get the away from me, right? That's not even a question we should be pondering, let alone trying to make a reality. And Sam just has this, white, bright-eyed view of the world that, someone needs help. We should help her. And that's sort of built into this riff. We can talk about Sam if we want to or not, but just the thought of all these people who are seemingly so flawed just highlights these bright, shining individuals that just seem like, how are they still alive in this world?
Yeah, I don't remember when I said this, but I think Sam still probably has one of the most tragic, basically, backstories of why he's there at the wall. And so obviously already he's not in control of his own life. And yeah, he has that naivete of everything's good. And I think he's still even kind of... So Jon went to the wall with the thought that the Night's Watch is this pure brotherhood of men out there defending the realm against whatever is north of the wall. And I think Sam might still kind of have that thought, because when he talks about wanting to rescue, her name is Gilly, Craster's daughter-wife there, basically, who is pregnant, who possibly is going to have a son, which according to the laws of Craster means the son goes bye-bye, because there is only one male underneath that house. And Steven with his ugly face there making...
Yeah.
But so Sam probably still has that kind of pure thought that the Night's Watch is this band of kind of heroes is not the right word, but these do-gooders there who would kind of do what is right and not what is... do what is just, maybe. Not what necessarily is right, but do what is just there.
I just want to put out that Davos Seaworth also in that category. My man Davos.
Davos, even though he's a pirate, or was a pirate, I guess,
Smuggler.
he's definitely... What?
Smuggler.
Smuggler. Even though he was a smuggler, he has definitely become lawful good, in my opinion.
Yeah, very much so.
Throwing out that role-playing D&D reference. By the book, has to be done by the book. Something not by the book is wrong and evil.
Not even necessarily by the book. He is... It's maybe not the book of, like, the law, but, like, the book of what is good and true, kind of.
Here's my morals. Here's what I follow. If it's not inside that, it's wrong and must be destroyed or must be condemned, at least brought to light.
One more thing we'll kind of touch on here, but I guess unless if anyone else has any more questions here, the final thing I wanted to just touch on here was just Arya and Gendry. They're basically the traveling wagon, basically leaving King's Landing, going to the wall. It's kind of like the start, basically, of a friendship there, or just kind of respect, because Gendry has made he has basically put two together to know that Arya is really a lady there, basically. She's been pretending to be a young boy. due to what I forget the guy's name, but he told her basically, you're a boy now, basically, to try and conceal her as they make their way north. Gendry has put together who she is, and then Arya kind of reveals herself to Gendry that she is Arya Stark of Winterfell, and Gendry, as kind of a joke, kind of starts calling her my lady, which she does not like whatsoever.
Right.
It's not ladylike.
Absolutely.
A man also meets a certain person in that same scenes, and a man's name I cannot remember. And what is his name?
Jaqen Hagar.
Ken Hikar.
Jaqen Hagar. Yes.
Yes.
Something.
But yes, I guess other than that, is there any kind of final points we want to touch on here before we kind of wrap this episode up? Take everyone's silence and nodding heads there as probably good. Steven, you look like you're staring intently at something there.
I'm looking at just a review just to kind of jog my memory of a couple different things, and I think we got everything.
Okay.
Miss anything, it's your fault, Steven, so don't let us
I'm
down.
sorry.
Exactly.
Good discussions. Interesting points, all.
Yes.
Mhm.
Good conversation.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So for next time, then, basically, we'll continue on with season 2. We'll be watching episode 3, What Is Dead May Never Die, and episode 4, Garden of Bones.
So they'll be happy.
Yes.
Great happy sounding episodes.
Nothing ominous coming just by the titles of those episodes. Nothing ominous is coming at all. It's going to be sunshine and rainbows for everyone.
Fine.
Dead may never die
fine.
in bones.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you all have a good time enjoying this episode, and we'll talk to you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.